Hi everyone, welcome to Video Translator AI Dev Diary. So I wanted to give you an update today for the 16th of December, what we're doing, where we're at. In case you're new here with Video Translator AI, it is a voice-powered SaaS agent, so you can do a number of things with it. I'm going to show you what these are, but largely the context is you have a meeting or you want to take some notes, you do it with your voice, and then agents do things off the back of that. Generally used in reports and things like that. So, you have a meeting, you need to create a report after it. This is what you would use. We also lean into the translation aspect of it. So if it's with a different person or a different language, that works right out the bat. Today, I'm going to show you what we've been up to for the couple of days into the 16th of December 2025. So we made a number of changes to tenantMiscSpec and userMiscSpec. In case you're here because you're looking at how to think about building your own vibe coded app, this is the context of a lot of the conversation that's going to be happening. So I'm going to show you what tenantMiscSpec and what userMiscSpec are and why we use these for UI fixes, right? So tenant and user specific UI. Tenant means client. So you've got the app in aggregate. Within the app, there's tenants, these are clients, and within clients, you have individual users. A bunch of icons on superadmin. I'm going to give you a brief insight into superadmin. We're going to do a deep dive into superadmin some point in the future. But yeah, what creating new users across superadmin, admin, and tenant look like. Viewer and user roles, how tooling is applied within the context of a chat window or push to talk, and audit. So yeah, get comfy, and if you like what we're doing and are following it, that is awesome. And I hope it works and is helpful for you to build your own vibe coded app. Right. This is the core of what we're going to be showing you. First, I'll show you what the app looks like and does very, very quickly so you understand the context, and then we'll get into some of the details. I'm in the local environment here. This is some testing I was working on earlier, which is pretty interesting to see, I suppose, if you care about that kind of thing. So here we have a new chat window. This is normally where a user is going to come in, and we can do relatively simple things. Today, I'm going to do a transcription and interpretation, just to show you what that looks like. So we're going to go, instead of Spanish, we'll use Hindi because I speak Hindi. This all saves, and the way all these settings save is going to be the topic of discussion with tenantMisc and userMisc settings, right? I just want to call out this bit. So the idea is once you've set this up, whenever you make changes, the next chat window, whatever you do, will include this, right? So it's how do you set defaults nicely on a per user and per tenant basis. That's the core of what we're going to be talking about today. But this also has a voiceover here. So hello, how are you? What happened there is a voiceover. It didn't actually play from the app because I'm not using that particular function in my OBS. It did play fundamentally. Let me just see if I can fix that.
ये मूल रूप से चला था। चलिए देखता हूँ कि क्या मैं इसे ठीक कर सकता हूँ।
Hello, how are you?
नमस्ते, आप कैसे हैं?
So, I'm not able to particularly hear what's happening here. I hope you can in the recording, but what should have happened is it should have played in my speakers. Anyways, um, what you can see is I said something, it translates it, transcribes it, translates it, and then plays a voiceover out, and then also gives you a summary and email summary. Cool. And also, I'm on the free trial, and it says a little bit about what's happening there. That's the core of what the app does. Now, in terms of the config fields for tenantMiscSpec and userMiscSpec, the way the config fields work is you obviously have your database with lots of information about the tenant and clients within it, but you also have quite a lot of UI level settings, and you don't necessarily want these in the database because the UI keeps changing, and in an ideal world, you don't want to do a migration every time, right? So it's really straightforward little settings. So the same settings that were here, transcribe, interpret, language pair, start, voiceover, all of that, is also there in, let me just show you some code now. Here. So we've got tenantMiscSpec and userMiscSpec. If you look at these, let me just expand them a little bit so it's easier to see. Primary language, allow integrations, you'll see they're exactly the same, right? Why would you do this? So what happens is within a register route, when a new client, when a new user signs up, they're automatically assigned a client. So we use the word client and tenant kind of interchangeably. Tenant is a client. And then the user is set to the admin permissions within that tenant. They also get all this stuff. And so when a user gets this stuff, we have somewhere to save, should we have a new conversation every day? Yes, no. What do we start on, the transcribe or the interpret function? So whatever the user happens to use more often, that'll get saved as default. Within the transcribe, what's the language ID and should we have voiceover? Within the interpret, what's the primary language, secondary language, and should we have voiceover? And you can see that there's a number of settings where all this is set straight out, and that's what people get to see when they log into the app. Okay. What I'm going to do now is show you a little bit about, now that you've seen what this looks like, let's have a look at superadmin because that's where the majority of this shows up. As you can see, there's a lot more inside superadmin than you see when you're in as a tenant, right? This is my local dev environment. And if you look at tenants, I've basically just got two. I've got the vendor, which is a super admin functionality within ours. And I've got this warm banks here. We're based in Sydney, so when we give tenants IDs, it's generally emotion dash Australian flora or fauna, right? It's one of those things. So this is to tenant warm banks here, and you can see that there's a lot of information here. Now, one of the things I did in this patch is, we give everything icons to make it look a little bit nicer. That's new user refresh. Now, what you should be able to see here is 3 users and 3 different kinds of roles. When you register as a brand new user, you're automatically set to admin. But then let's say So let's talk about how clients use this a little bit. Generally, the IT person will be the admin, and the people actually doing the stuff will be users, right? You also might have viewers, but that's mostly an audit function. So the IT person will be able to see the audit, and the auditor will come in as a viewer. So they don't really need to use the app in any meaningful way. They just need to see how it was used and make sure the pricing is good. So finance people, compliance people, stuff like that. We are either this one, which is what I was using, or with this one. And that's what happens. There's two places that roles exist. So let's say I have a look at the admin user. We've got a role here, which is fine, right? But we also have tooling. This is what they can do within the chat, and chat roles are basically a little bit different to normal roles, right? With normal roles, it's can I navigate to this page? If you're building voice agents, this is probably kind of important to you. But we also want what questions can I ask the AI as a user with different permissions? And that's quite an important thing, right? So tooling permissions. So for instance, let's say I want to run the way I use it. So let's give you an example of an R&D client, right? In Australia, here in Sydney, we have R&D users, and the government gives tech companies money for money they spend on R&D. As part of that process, you need to supply compliance and logs and things like that, and just prove that you actually did the R&D. It wasn't just randomness. Um, that's what we use. So you start the meeting. This is going to be an R&D meeting. You talk about the progress of different R&D projects. That gets summarized, gets turned into a nice email record, and gets sent to your R&D agent. Right? That's the core flow. Now, we don't necessarily want a user to also be triggering job approvals off that, for instance, right? Because it's an orchestration, it's a process. In that case, we might take that off, and then the GPT will basically refuse to do that if they ask it to. That's what tooling is here. This is the MISC settings, which is what we were talking about earlier, and you can see again, it's basically the same thing, which I showed you previously, and these change depending on what's happening. Creating new users. Okay, so this is quite a big patch. Here we're in superadmin, and now superadmin can create users. Kind of looks like this. And if we log out and log in as this user, we'll also be able to create users from within the tenant, and you can set the tooling and you can set their roles, and all that kind of stuff was put in this time. It didn't actually exist in the past. We really hadn't defined user and viewer roles particularly well. If you're a user, and what I'm going to do is I'm going to log out of here and log in as a user. You can see I don't have most of these things because frankly, I'm not that interested in them and it doesn't really make a difference, right? If I try to click on trial, it says account is limited to a user role, contract year administrator. The user needs to know what kind of plan they're on, right? If they're running out of credits or whatever, but they don't need to have the ability to change things about there or add and remove credit cards and things like that. That's limited to the admin functionality. They can, of course, change their own information and profiles, and chat can happen without too much drama. I'll just do another quick one to show you something interesting that we did. So I can do something like this. I can go hello, and this is just sort of a normal chat thing. And you can see how it says untitled conversation here. So I've just changed that to happy conversation, and again, it's a chatbot, so clearly it doesn't have any feelings. But normally, if it stays untitled conversation, this, based on your conversation, will actually give it a title. So I think that was pretty interesting, and yeah, otherwise it would just overwrite it. So that's a small bug that got fixed. Um, Tooling I've talked about, audit, viewer roles. Okay, cool. Let me show you audit really quickly. I'm gonna have to log out of this, aren't I? Okay, let's do this. So this is what audit looks like. Normally with a user, you don't really see audit because you don't need it. You instead go directly into the chat. With a viewer role, you would go directly into the audit, right? Because you don't actually have chat. Um, and yeah, it's primarily based around resources and who used what and what was actually done and how things worked out, all of that good stuff. But yeah, quick update as to what we've been up to, and hopefully this was kind of helpful from your perspective of building your own app. Let me know if there's questions we can answer or how you're looking at this. And if you need a report generated or you have a process that you'd like to automate off the back of an AI agent, reach out to us, let me know, and we'll help you out. Thanks so much.